Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. One more meeting today, though, and I may lose it.
Hello.
Hi, Jim.
Hi,
Hi.
you guys. I
Hi.
heard you're both coming to our conference. Actually, all three of you are. That's so exciting.
I'm looking forward to it. Also, I've never been to Seattle, so that'll be fun.
Oh, Seattle's amazing. I love Seattle.
That's what I hear.
hmm
Yeah, I'm
Well,
looking forward to it.
it's yeah, it's a lot different than it used to be, but it's still nonetheless pretty cool.
Okay. So, Carrie, do you mind taking notes? I posted
Not
that
at all.
little mini agenda. Hopefully you saw that in the Google Doc.
Yep.
And then I don't know if anybody saw it, but I also posted an outline. So we're gonna spend some time going over that. But let me pull up the agenda just so that we can kind of make sure so that we can set our intention for the meeting today. Isn't that what they say? Set your intentions.
Yes, it is.
All right. We are rapidly approaching the time where things are kind of wrapping up. Oh, Calvin is delivering me toys. We've gotten a lot of things in recently. All right, so I'm going to share. Okay, so on the oh, okay, that's the way we're going to do it. On the docket today, these are the items that we wanted to cover. Broadband project updates. I put this in for Jaylene kind of mentioned that this is something we probably should talk about a little bit. We have kind of talked with some folks about what we're doing with the broadband project, kind of what the deliverables are for it, some of the tools that are built in, and there's generated quite a bit of interest. We've talked to several groups. I've talked to HRSA specifically in kind of two different ways. But well, Jaylene, I guess you were the one who kind of wanted to talk about it. Do you want to kind of lead off the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things, right? So, I don't know what other conversations you guys have been involved in, but I did have Jordan and Mike meet with the Utah Digital Opportunity Network, otherwise known as UDON, just like the noodle. And they did utilize some of the tools from the broadband project. I believe the speed test will be up on their website. So that's great. I mean, kind of going through this process, like, of course, like, some of the materials aren't really queued up for what the requirements of the challenge process are. However, we did do a little bit of brainstorming of how people might be able to utilize this data, which is great. And I also did connect with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance earlier this week. I was just talking to Aaron Schill, who is speaking at our conference. He is the Director of Research and Data for the NDIA. He wants to connect with Mike and Jordan, who will both be at our conference. And actually, yeah, and Mike and Carrie, if you want to join the conversation too, like we can all talk about it if you want to. But he's really interested in some of the tools, some of the data, how that might be useful to the NDIA in general. But he also mentioned, not sure if we want to do like this as a community call subject, but they do want us to post the information, any free resources that we have on the NDIA listserv. And the listserv is a really interesting place. People post to it frequently. I've posted a lot to the listserv, and there's really, really great information going on there. We'll need to get together at some point and draft something to send to Aaron before we post it. So Jordan, I don't know when you want to do that. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of capacity leading up to Savannah. But I mean, we could sit down and do that at any time. I think no big rush.
I and there probably is something that we can take and modify depending on. So we've got some summaries of like I sent you one that was Alaska specific, but we could we can get our Exactly folks to kind of modify something. Is that what you're talking about? Some sort of overview? Wow. Hit the
Yeah.
light just
Yeah.
wrong there. Okay. Yeah, I can, that shouldn't be too hard to pull together. We mostly have it.
Okay. One of the other things that Aaron did mention, and I think, I mean, we'll eventually bring this up also within the healthcare disparities meeting whenever it gets posted, but there's two like fairly large grants coming directly from the NTIA that are supposed to be released some point this year. They're thinking maybe like late spring, early summer. One is a competitive digital equity programming grant, but the other one is a broadband capacity grant. So I don't know if that's something that this group or Jordan, you guys would be interested in applying for. I mean, I know that there's talks with HRSA about expanding the project anyways, but just kind of a thought there because they're looking for more nationally focused projects as opposed to, just smaller scale projects. So the link for where that's going to be when that's ready, I can post in chat. But yeah, just something to kind of consider. And then let me take a look at my notes and see if there's anything specifically on that. He also did mention the Broadband Mapping Coalition. Jordan, are you guys involved in that?
We kind of have our own tool. It's
Mhm.
strange. So like we have a mapping tool that has all the it has the sorry, has large data sets in it. It includes our data sets. You can filter it and do the drop down, but it's kind of our own. It's not I don't think it's part of any kind of organization or coalition.
Right. So the coalition, it might be something we look into. I put the link in chat as well, or it might be something you guys look into. Something that the NDIA is really good at doing is promoting and creating coalitions like this to just kind of share best practices and see what others are doing. I'm not certain that they have any tools of their own, but it's put up by the Marconi Society. And it's just used as a space, as far as I know, for organizations doing this type of work to kind of feed off each other and again, share best practices. So links in chat for that. But yeah, just some interesting things there. And then there was also like some talk about a ninja training, which I need to round back with other people on at some point. But that's more related to like BEAD and DE timelines, challenge process, and how we can help and how to get involved, and then also like other funding opportunities too. So we'll probably be talking about that at some point within a ninja training. And other than that, I mean, Jordan, I kind of wanted to get your feedback on the meeting with Udon and kind of talk about if you felt like it was useful, if you felt like we're headed the right direction for where this information needs to go. Because if not, like we can always turn around and, not go that direction. But again, I think this is kind of the crowd that's interested in this kind of information.
So yeah, I'll talk about that. But yeah, this is our mapping tool, and we've actually built a lot of this with funds from this project. And you can see it actually goes down to state, county, includes MLab data, includes our data. There's a lot of it's a useful map, and then it kind of breaks things down into underserved, unserved, and then served. But like probably the unique thing about this map is that it includes tribal lands as a call out, and it gets down, it provides the county overlay that not all the other broadband maps do. But this isn't the pod data necessarily. There's other views that we have for the pod data. This is more of a, they took MLab's data and then they just mapped it out. So, but yeah, let's talk about kind of what's going on with the broadband project, just so that you guys are aware. So we've had a couple, not to put too fine a point on it, but kind of some come to Jesus meetings with HRSA, where they're very much like, hey, we need more data points. They are very, very focused on the study areas for our project. And so what this is going to look like in terms of timelines is there's pre-June work, and then there's post-June work. And what I mean by that is we've got to get our tech data so that they can run their analysis and submit publications off of the pod data and kind of all the broadband data that we can get. And they need a significant amount of lead time to make that happen. And so what we're looking at is that looks like it's going to be end of June that they need to get that data. So right now it's kind of a mad scramble to get as many pods and tests in the study areas. So those are those the 3 states and the 13 counties. So that's kind of the scramble, and that's going to be kind of priority number 1 until June. After June and our study data is entered, that's when we can start looking a lot more carefully at expansion data, and we can start, like, it really opens up some time for us. So there's a few things that are gonna, so pre-June work is really focused on study area, pod placement, clinical focus. So we want pods in the study area in clinical environments, and that's kind of, we're trying to run all out at that, and that's really the focus. Post-June work is generating the report. We're building a custom broadband website that pulls together all the learnings from the project, and we'll present it in kind of a map form, a few data view forms. HRSA is really excited about this idea. We're actually talking to them Tuesday about it, but I am really pushing that this be a TTAC hosted site, and that we put in a lot of accessible materials on it so that we can use it as a TRC resource. So that we'll have, you can check your speed tests, you can do some comparisons to people in your area. It'll all go to our larger state, or it'll all go to our larger national test repository, and that could be really useful. But and then that said, anything that we can do that doesn't kind of limit our ability to focus on the study area, pod placement, clinical focus, it's potentially useful for us. So it's a really easy lift to get the testing widget embedded in another organization's website. It's just a little bit of code that goes in on their website, and it puts the widget in, and then it points all the speed test data at our data set. So that's completely worthwhile. Any test points are useful. If it's not in the study area, it's like less useful for HRSA in the immediate term, but overall, it's probably almost more worthwhile for the project in general. So does that kind of help draw some lines around it?
Yep. And I think too, like, if we're going to be posting to the listserv, maybe what we do is wait till after we meet with Aaron at our conference, and then kind of see what the most useful information to get out there. Because as you're kind of talking, I mean, the listserv might be a good place to find potential people to take the pods, or at least do some outreach for that. The people there are really, really, they're boots on the ground, grassroots efforts, like really motivated to do things like that. And also, like, I had a question in regards to like the custom project website. So would that, if that's created, also include mapping of sorts?
We're talking with HRSA on Tuesday about what they want to include. The way they describe it, it feels like a toolkit to me. So it'd be a custom broadband toolkit. They want to focus on stories. They want to focus on learnings. That's their new favorite word, is learnings. They want to focus on data, looking at data, looking at trends in the data, and then mapping is also on their list. So it could be kind of all of those things, and so we could kind of generate an experience, like a broadband experience. So it would feel to me like a telehealth technology toolkit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Well, too, I think, for just for like our own purposes, I mean, we've kind of discussed here and there utilizing some of the TAPS information to send like pods to if this expands out eventually, so forth and so on. But also, I mean, if there's a component of like mapping like healthcare disparities, that's something that we've kind of talked about for a long time, like seeing where in the nation there aren't particular services and creating kind of like a heat map of some kind, I think would be useful information for a lot of people to have, particularly health systems. But yeah, that's just kind of me just like throwing ideas out there because I think that sounds interesting. And I think, the custom project would be something definitely worthwhile.
So I don't know if you've been listening in on my meetings, but it's kind of scary. That's exactly what HRSA's asked for, and one of the things that we're not
Cool.
really sure how to do. So like, what would be good is if we could. They want to include broadband data over healthcare data, and see if
Mhm.
they can draw like conclusions, like, hey, where broadband is least prevalent, we have the highest prevalence of maternal fetal health bad outcomes, or something like that. So that's what
Yeah.
they're looking for, is some way to kind of map those two those sorts of data sets together, is one of the things that they're really interested in. And if there's like easy data sets that we can include, that are available, that we can include with our broadband data, this is not to give you more work, but we should set up a call with Exactly Labs together, and discuss that, because that's definitely something that they're interested in. That's definitely something, if we could tell them we could do that, they would kind of lose their minds, I think.
Oh, I think
Well-
it's definitely possible. And also, oh, sorry, Reed, just one more thing. I was just going to throw in there a good person to bring in on some of these discussion, even though like technically he doesn't work with us anymore, is Matt McCullough. Matt has a PhD in medical geography, which I didn't even know was a thing till I met Matt. But he was the one who kind of got us excited about the potential of mapping disparities, and he would know where the bodies are buried. Reed, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. Matt would be great. I would say that I guess I have a couple of thoughts. One, Jordan, if you want to just pencil down that we just gotta find who on each team commits to it. The Netric prepare for your telehealth visit, the speed test your mic, test your video link. I've finally won the team debate to make that not beta test language anymore. And so that should be done within the next week. When that happens, it's going to go up on hhs.gov. And I know Jaylene's planning on posting it some places. We would be thrilled to put your speed test link in there. Garrett and I talked about it at the very infancy of the project. Is pipe dream that you guys would have that. And I had a pipe dream of building this tool. Both pipe dreams came true. So it's fine time to update it. I think we're just using one of the ones that, provided an iframe code for our IT team currently as a holding spot. But then two, what you and Jaylene are talking about is exactly what, Matt McCullough, Kathy Wibberley, Michael Wasser, and I were all kicking around when the maps first came out. I think regardless, we should explore the conversation, but this might be the best opportunity for all three to make their case for sustainability to HRSA, right? Like the Esri tool, Esri database incorporates so many federal data sets. Anything that anybody posts on Esri that's publicly available, you just click a button and you have it on the map. That's why we chose it for Telehealth Locator, is to overlay some of these health disparities data. It took us quite a while to get the data right. But what I'm getting at is Jaylene and I just ironed out TAPS data sharing agreements between MCD and Utah. So if, ANTHC and MCD found a way to share the data, and then MCD and UATN and ANTHC found a way to share the data between the three of us, that map is pretty easily built. Currently, it's not sustainable, but we have the software currently to build it.
Right.
If that's a conversation we want to have.
So I want to put a little bit of a pin in this. I'd like to give ourselves a couple task items on this and then kind of move to the next thing. But I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to meet with HRSA next week and find out what they want from the website. But I think a lot of this could overlap with what we're doing. So that's so the next step is to meet with HRSA. I think it would be worthwhile, and it's an open question as to whether we bring. I'd like to bring Matt back to either this group or set up a separate group to have a conversation around this. I almost think maybe this group has work to do. Maybe we have a separate conversation that we set up, and maybe even bring Matt and a couple others. But I'd like to wait to do that until after we've met with HRSA. So have a data mapping
party. Done.
I am not a map nerd. So this is you guys are using acronyms that I'm not aware of. I'll be the first to admit it. So we want to make sure that we kind of get that in. And Michael has been trying to kind of pin down exactly what HRSA wants for months now. And I think we're getting close on it. But I think if we can give them something, we need to give them a win. And I think if we can give them some cool mapping and data overlays, that would be good. All right. And then I'd like to have that conversation potentially before Savannah, just so that we could potentially kind of mention it in passing in Savannah, or we could talk about that being an iron we have in the fire in Savannah, because we need to talk about what this group's doing and kind of what the outputs are. So I'd like to work on setting that up so that we can at least know what we speak of. Fair enough?
Great. Yeah, and I think whatever that one panel that we're all on, that might be a good opportunity to mention that while we're in Savannah.
And I've got that as a section for a little bit later. So I'd love to kind of bull out some points of things that we want to talk about.
I
With
would
that
agree, though, that I think that some of this can follow down in there.
Mhm.
All right. Moving forward, design graphics. And Reed, I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but Netric has offered to help, and then PBTRC may have a graphics person that can potentially help kind of prettify and lay out the things that we need to put together. And we'll basically be giving them kind of 2 documents to work with a similar kind of style and layout, and that would be the one that we're creating, the primer we're creating for the AI group, and then the output that we're creating from this group, which is the broadband, the TRC broadband overview. So just wanted to kind of inform about that. Is
The
that
only thing I toss out there, based off your conversation with HRSA, if there is an avenue for a toolkit, then maybe whether it's a third or you push one of those towards the toolkit design. I think if we did it in an articulate software design, it'd be something that, Jaylene could post on the various Canvas sites that Northwest does. It'd be something that we could post in Telehealth Classroom. It'd be it's an easily embedded learning management system that MCD and Netric and some of the consultants we work with have staff on. So you mentioned toolkits earlier. If with your conversations, toolkits, sort of bubble
Okay.
up,
So-
we can help.
Reed, I'm going to try to repeat back what I heard from you and you see if I got it. So you're talking about if we do create resources or recreate a toolkit, you'd like to see it get into some sort of learning management module or something?
Yeah, well, so Articulate is a toolkit type web software that can be then embedded into learning management systems. easily, right? So like a lot of what Jaylene and Northwest design is meant to be embedded in Canvas, which is a lot of universities learning management systems. Articulate can be embedded in there. Every course on our telehealth classroom site is developed using Articulate, right? So it takes the content and puts it into a package that a learning management system can accept and have adaptations built around it.
Okay.
And
So-
we have that capacity here. So I know in AI we're talking fact sheets, but you mentioned toolkits here. We could totally explore that too.
I want us to keep like our short-term goal really as manageable as we can make it and as focused as we can make it. I think a handout's probably what we want to do in the short term, and then absolutely kind of expanding it out to a toolkit, doing some sort of webinar or
Perfect.
training on it. Like I think those are the next steps, potentially in a future quarter. But we want to kind of wrap up
that
the
sounds
deliverable.
perfect.
Okay. At this point, I want to switch over to the outline and kind of talk about what's in the outline. Anyone have a problem with that? Real quick. I spent some significant time working on the kind of what I'm considering. So I've broken this down into page 1 content, which is, I don't even like the national level content. I'm going to call this broadband overview. Just the more general, high level things that we kind of want to I think a level set the conversation, right? Like, how do we kind of make sure that everybody knows kind of what we're talking about, why we're talking about it, why it's important, and then some of the things that are happening that impact kind of everything. And then on the page 2, really look at and I'm saying regional here, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case, but actionable resources. So getting people plugged into things that are happening in the region, getting people plugged into things that are happening with TRCs. We could have something from the broadband project there, like a link to a QR code to go take one of the speed tests, so like kind of know what your speeds are, those sorts of things. That's what I'm kind of focused in on page 2. This week I've been really working on kind of what's in page 1. So I kind of want to run through that, and then I really can use some help on kind of pulling together what we want to talk about on page 2. But anybody have kind of a problem, or not problem, I'm being confrontational. Anybody have questions on the overall format that we're looking at here? One of the things that I'm running into with the AI group is that I'm realizing I can't fit what I want to do with the AI group on 2 pages. That may very well be the case here. I'd like to keep it short, but I also want to kind of raise the point that I'm not married to having just 2 pages of information. If it's valuable and if it's easily navigatable from kind of content to content. So I just want to throw that out there. As I've kind of been pulling stuff together, I'm realizing that I may have more than a page worth of content. I may just need to murder some darlings so that we can kind of, get it down to what's going to fit on a page, or we may just want to look at maybe expanding kind of the document. In page 1, I broke down the subject into I think it's 4 or 3 main categories. Our introduction, the importance of broadband and telehealth, consumer patient perspective, and then the provider perspective, which is kind of what we have talked about before for the structure. And the idea being that we could actually make 2 documents, one that would be focused on consumers and then one would be focused on providers, and that we would swap out those sections based on who the audience was that we were making it available to. Following? Okay. In the introduction, we want to talk about what broadband is. I know that's really basic, but it is important if we're going to make something that's accessible. So we'll go with a kind of a clear plain text definition. So fast internet that's always on. And then we can talk about the FCC definition a little bit. And then then go into some of the types of broadband. I think it's useful to talk about, the differences between fiber, copper, wireless, and satellite. I think just kind of like pros and cons in a bullet list of like fiber's, really fast, but it's expensive to put in and can be hard to expand, beyond kind of the original scope. Some basic things like that. Satellite has a lot of latency, but can get you access where terrestrial doesn't exist. So fleshing that out some more.
Question.
Go ahead.
So I think it's really important to have the what is broadband, because part of the adoption problem is that people don't even know what that is and what that means to them. I'm curious though, if our target audience is going to care about the types of broadband. Like, is that going to be relevant and meaningful to them?
So I'm too close to the topic. I'm gonna recuse myself. If it's not worthwhile to go into the different, most definitions kind of talk about this a little bit, but it could be something that just is not really worthwhile. I'll leave that to the group.
And I agree. Well, I don't think we should be incredibly married to the length of the document that we have right now. I think it's more important to identify the most meaningful and relevant information to our target audience, and then figure out the length of the document and the design from there. So maybe I could start with us all reminding one another of who our target audience is. To whom is this information going? So it's going out to the general public, the masses?
So when we spent some time talking about this at the beginning, and I think what we landed on is we wanted something that was approachable, easily readable, and was targeted at consumers and targeted at rural and underserved healthcare providers. Rural and underserved consumers, rural and underserved healthcare providers. Are we kind of in consensus on that?
We are. So then I would go back to the group considering removing number 2, the types of broadband. And I would love to hear others opine on this before you delete it. Don't delete it yet.
I could see taking that out. I think from trying to erase the things that I know about broadband, like if you're a consumer, a patient, or someone looking to connect with a doctor, how you access it. So finding an ISP, finding a discount plan, if that's applicable, those kind of things seem relevant to that audience a bit more than the perspective of what media is used to deliver it.
Okay. I'm on board. Is everybody in general agreement with the idea? Like less on the how, more on the what and the why it matters?
I think at least in the first faction, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, just to reiterate the last 2 points, in in one of my other hats in the Medicaid managed group homes, I went to a site visit last week where they, contract out their IT services. It's a multi-site organization, right? 5 facilities, talking almost 45 residents they serve. The residential manager looked at me like a deer in headlights when I asked him to run a speed test. I was like, hey, can you sign me into a guest Wi-Fi, or could you run a speed test if I tell you the link to run it off of? And he was like, it was a palpable pause. What is that? And I'm like, a speed test, like a Wi-Fi speed test. I just need to know what you're receiving, in this corner of the facility. Once we did it, is this good? And it was not. I mean, it was 15 up, 5 down. It was bad. And I was like, no. And then he's like, well, I've never looked at these. What does this mean? Right. Like, this is the individual that would be pushing the carts to the residents for their visits. He had no basic understanding, nor anybody immediately available to help him, because they contract out to some other, organization 5 towns away for IT support.
Well, they're paying good money to not have to think about that, Reed.
And you saw the results, right?
I'm
No,
just
I know
joking.
you're right. I know
But
you're
no,
right. It
it's a
was
really
just
good point.
super humbling because, like, you know, at NDIA on our panel, Jaylene had a comment about how, like, you can say, you know, 25 up, 25 down till you're blue in the face, but some people don't know what that means. It's more valuable to ask them if they can stream a whole Netflix show. I think for our first fact sheet, that's our audience. You know, it's the people that are like, I live in this digital medium. What do you mean this takes extra consideration?
Okay. I'm totally on board. I think the next piece here then is actually probably worthwhile because it might be an actual question that our audience might actually have. Is broadband the same as Wi-Fi? I think that's one that we can kind of talk about a little bit and talk about like, hey, you may be getting okay connectivity to your house, but there may be other things going on in your house that are creating problems. So I think keeping that section in, but getting rid of like, you know, the broadband. It's internet that comes to your door and it needs to be sufficiently fast is probably worthwhile enough. Okay.
Well, I think that is a good point because if you have broadband, but you don't have a way to get that that broadband to your connected device, this is good information. It is, for me, this is like educating people. This is good.
Okay.
Back on
So-
the CC, they March 14th, there's a letter that they actually did go to the 120 for wired.
Oh,
landline
okay.
connections. Just to update that section. I'll pop the link in.
I saw that. I think that was actually the same day that he was staring me in the face because I was just like, man, I'm so excited about this. What do you mean you don't know that what you have is abysmal? What do you?
That's great. That's been a long time coming, and I guess I just missed it when it did. So, okay, great. All right, and then so it's 120, which is really helpful. That's a more meaningful metric than 25 and 3. Particularly the 3 is I can cause a bad day real quick. So, and I'm gonna expose a little bit of ignorance. Are you guys been following the FCC broadband labels at all? Okay, I was unaware that these were rolling out, and they're really kind of a cool thing. And we can actually kind of, as we're getting this out, it'll actually kind of coincide really nicely with when the broadband labels will be dropping. So we, as a tool, particularly for consumers, but also for providers, just saying like, hey, check your label, you know, these are the things, and we can provide one of the FCC examples in our tool as to like, hey, read the label, kind of know what you're getting, right? I thought it was useful to talk about barriers to broadband access. This might be Carrie, hold my feet to the fire here again, because I might be getting a little too pedantic here. So if it is, let me know. But we talk about barriers to broadband access, just availability of services, access to broadband, cost, and digital illiteracy. Is that audience specific enough, or is that targeted at a different audience, like healthcare organizations or like HRSA or someone like that that can actually like is looking for solutions? If I tell a person, well, the reason you can't get broadband is because you can't afford it, is that not a useful thing to say in this context?
I don't think that it's useful to say. It actually might come off as being a little judgmental.
Right.
Yeah,
And then,
Are we having? Is there a bear? You know, like and this is just my ignorance because I've really been reading the notes and listening to the recordings. In the AI, we're gonna have the limitations, barriers to what we're talking about here. Is this fact sheet gonna have something similar? Because I see both sides of it, right? Like,
okay, so let me swing it a different direction. If we keep this a strength based document, which we all recognize that broadband is a huge driving social determinant of health. And so the culture around social determinants of health is keeping it more of a strength based rather than calling out vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So
Yeah.
how can we still address the barriers, but keeping it from a strength based perspective? Like, what do communities have that they can currently leverage to get over these barriers would be a
Yeah.
strength-based approach.
Okay,
I
so
mean, and I would agree with that. I would say you can get away with that framing on the web page that this fact sheet lives on, right? The blurb before you click the link. Like, setting aside economical and other logistical factors, here are things to consider regarding your broadband quality. Click here, blah, blah, blah.
yeah, I really like what's being said here. So don't say, well, the reason you don't have broadband is because you don't know how to operate your tablet and connect to the service. What we do is we say like, hey, this is really, really important. It really matters. It can really improve your life. Here are resources that can help you get connected. And then we keep it a really, really positive, a really, really like, hey, these are the good things. This is how you get the good things.
Yes, and I'm happy to help us wordsmith this so that it is strength-based.
Okay, this is
And I do think that even at the bottom of the fact sheet, there's other links within TRCs that we can provide that say, struggling to afford access, learn this, blah, 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 right? Like the Obama phone still exists. Still pipe dream the ACP exists, right? Like we can acknowledge the realities somewhere outside of the content on this one.
okay. So I'm so used to speaking to inform that like this is a different this is helping me. So we want to speak to equip. So I like where we're headed at. And yes, Reed, I'm absolutely we're gonna need help pulling together all those resources. So all right.
I put a few resources in the chat, just a heads up.
All right. I do think so. Not to make us seasick, but we're gonna kind of bounce up and down. So what we have so far is the broadband overview. In the broadband overview section, we do an introduction where we talk about what broadband is. We kind of say, hey, are we talking about Wi-Fi? No, we're not talking about Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is important and you want to understand it. How do we know? I'm not sure if this belongs here. Maybe we should move this down to the resources section. Maybe we need to move the FCC labels down to the resources section. Okay.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, I think there might be a later fact sheet that, that as a focal reference makes sense. But if you're looking at it like the way you said that, with the intent to equip, that's probably secondary tier information.
All right. Is
On
there? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say under the is the broadband, same as the Wi-Fi on that first one, broadband is internet connection to your router. It might be useful to work in the concept of the internet service provider there, because if you're coming at this from really not understanding that, the entity that provides it, I think, is an important part of that.
Yeah, and I think
Who are they interfacing with to affect that capability?
So can I ask a question to follow up on that you guys have probably already debated? Are you talking about what that means? Because until until the ARPA funding came through where I live, fastest speeds was through cable wire. Like right up until I bought this house in October, the fastest the fastest broadband and Wi-Fi we could get was through cable. Right. And now we have, high speed fiber that got laid. I've got a whole new ISP, all these things. but like the distinction of, is it cable, is it, Ethernet, is that something you guys have grappled with at all? To me, much like Jordan, it's sort of ancillary information. I've already considered it. But if we're talking about to equip, those are distinctions.
I think we need, I like the direction this is taking, where we're simplifying and kind of making it a little bit more targeted. I do think, I don't think any of the information here is bad, but I don't think if specifically consumers will care. I care about the speeds that I can get. I don't even care about latency because it's not something that I'm aware of. I just care about what I can get to my house and then how I can make it work in my house. So,
That's it.
Totally agree. And like to that point, I'm probably the only person in Farmington that was like, "Are you serious? Cable's the fastest I can get." Like, what I'm like, it's probably not important. I just don't know. I just wanted to get group feedback on it. I wouldn't dive into it necessarily.
I want to move pretty quickly here because I want to leave a couple minutes for us to talk about next steps and kind of where we're going. We're kind of reaching kind of crunch time for a lot of these things, so I want us to kind of figure some of this out. I do want to talk about the importance of broadband and telehealth. Specifically, like I think the 3 points we lean on is it helps improve access, it helps enhance care, and it helps kind of provide the future of telehealth by giving us resources that we can use to expand future technologies as they come through. Those were the ideas that I had. Any other kind of thoughts or ideas, or are we not hitting something hard enough?
This is an area where I thought I would go back and I'm starting to work on a project about how telehealth either bridges health disparities or widens the gap. And so I was going to go back and look at some of my notes to see if there was anything else that we can add in here. Number 3 is a little bit of a quandary to me. And I'll just tell you guys that like broadband, this is new to me. Until I got this job 10 months ago, I didn't care about broadband. I'm like one of the most ignorant people. So I can look at a document like this and think about what is it that do I need to know to understand broadband and how it's relevant to my life right now. And I don't know that number 3 is going to hit that for folks. I think it's important to us. I think it's incredibly important to us.
Okay.
So, we give a lot of presentations on the connection between like broadband access, digital literacy, and healthcare. And one of the first things we always do is talk about why it's important to healthcare. And I know that at some point Derek Ramsey did like a lit review, but we have a few articles that demonstrate, why this is important, why it's considered like a super social determinant of health, et cetera, et cetera. And if we wanted to include information, I think that would be good because to your point, I think making the case is half the battle when you're advocating for things like this. So, I mean, if we wanted to get a little bit of information, I'd be happy to like write something up from presentations we've given already, just about why it's important.
All right, what I'd like to do, Jaylene, do you mind adding like resources and kind of honing the bullets for this? And then Carrie, as our resident like consumer stand-in, if you want to look through and just make sure that those hit, and that like, hey, this is useful, this matters to me. And so we'll have you kind of vet that a little bit. Does that sound good?
Yep, happy to do that. Yes,
Jordan, just as an attempt to help rather than ask a bunch of questions after you guys have all done all the work. I mentioned earlier when you said stories for HRSA that I should connect you with Maine Connectivity Authority. It could be relevant here too, and I'm happy to do it. So I'm just doing a pulse check. Like the way that Maine set up their first sort of round of, the strategic planning for all the funding was really enabling the towns to have the conversations. But then also then as the authority, they had one staffer at each of those. And so they have, notes and summative thoughts and stories from various town and county level conversations about broadband expansion. Is that something that might be useful here? Because when Michael spoke, I was like, yeah. Or when Carrie first spoke, rather, sorry. I was like, yeah, no, she's right. It's fact sheet 2. But then I heard Jaylene, and I was like, no, I'd say it's the bottom of fact sheet 1, right? It's like, why does this really matter to you? Like, I remember before I moved to the town I live in, an individual being written up in one of their stories, basically saying, like, I'm moving if we don't pass this expansion because I have the opportunity to work from home and I can't do that here. And he was 24, right? So a small rural town, that's huge.
So
To have, you know what I'm saying?
I think we need to think about this in phases. For phase 1, I don't know that that's what we need to look at, but like,
Perfect.
phase 2, where we kind of expand this and we say like, okay, you've gotten your primer. Let's dive in a little bit deeper and talk about the effects of, these things on your community, the effects of these things. That absolutely, I think is round 2. Fair enough?
Perfect. Yeah, no, sounds good to me.
Okay.
I agree. That tracks with how social determinants of health are addressed, individual, community level. I think we're tracking well here.
Back on the, if you could scroll just back on the importance of broadband. I mean, broadband, so is a requirement to do most telehealth. So it's requisite for it. It's, looking at this more like how do you access telehealth? You need broadband, you need a device, you need the literacy to use it. So, again, depending on kind of what we're going to, but explaining a lot of things about broadband seems like maybe not quite the right direction.
Okay, repeat what you said kind of last there, Michael. I kind of lost the last little bit.
I just am suggesting, I guess, to approach this from sort of the how-to. What components do you need to be able to do telehealth? And broadband is one of those. And I think I said digital, the literacy to use the device or the software to have that interaction.
Okay, so do we think that these?
Yeah, I think so. I think what he's getting at is that like it's the cornerstone, right? Like you can be the most digitally literate person in the world, and you can be in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and there's not a damn thing you can do to get a telehealth visit.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could be super digitally illiterate, but be in Silicon Valley and have a speed you don't even know what to do with. So like, in this section, basically setting the level stone of like broadband is your first step to digital equity.
So this screen's in, I just wrote it down. This seems like an infographic to me, right? So like we could just say something like pillars of telehealth, right? Like our basics of telehealth. Like these are the things that you need. And that we just point out that connectivity is one of the things that, hey, if you don't have this, it doesn't go, right?
Almost like a Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, or like building a car, right? Like you could you could have the best car in the world, but you don't have any tires, it doesn't matter. You could have a car that works really well and we're adding a driver, a drive shifter that's a little bit fancier, a little bit smoother, but like either way, you got to know how this works.
So practically is a Venn diagram overdone? So like if we did like circles and we had connectivity, device access, digital literacy, and then telehealth providers and services, like in a Venn diagram, and then the section where they overlap, point to that or have that be telehealth. like, just kind of to represent it graphically, and then we could have the connectivity be a highlighted or a different color. Like, that's kind of the point that we're trying to make. Like, I'm trying to think of how we could make this visual, or if it's worthwhile to make it visual.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this section specifically, if there was like a little graphic like that, I think that makes a lot of sense because it then empowers them to look at the other two sides. And I mean, that's just my 2 cents on that.
Or I'm just catching up to where your head was at, Carrie, like a hierarchy of needs, right?
Yep, that's it. I mean, I like the Venn diagram idea too. I just think it's, we also have to appreciate how people learn. Some people learn just by reading content, other people need visuals. So, if we're thinking about instructional design principles, having a mix of graphics and content, I think is going to be kind of paramount.
Okay. And looking at the order of that, right? Like, I would think connectivity would be, like,
Yeah.
Maybe providers and services is more basic than connectivity, but probably not. Well, okay. We're getting in the weeds. I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to talk about some of the other things. Something like that. That might be the order I might put things in. So connectivity, having telehealth services in your area, having access to devices, and then digital literacy. Okay. I'm using some of the guidelines. There really aren't specifically spelled out guidelines for telehealth. Really all we can kind of point to is video. And it's highly variable, and they're very, there's a lot of things out there that says like, oh, you can do okay video on 0.5 meg, which, doesn't take into account like, somebody else is doing homework in the other room, that sort of thing. So, this is one of the things that's been missing, and it's just really hard to kind of quantify because it's all like, if you could do a next fix video, you can probably do a telehealth visit. But I want something a little bit more robust than that. And I've been working on this. I can work on this a little bit more. But 5 megabits per second to me is the floor. Download and upload, to kind of make sure that you're having an issue-free encounter, and that's per person. So like if you have 3 people in your home, you want to make sure that you're expanding that out kind of specifically, and they can't be doing anything kind of super bandwidth intensive. But some more work needs to be done on that. All right, I'm gonna hop back to the agenda because we're basically out of time. I want to talk about our Savannah report out, HRSA deliverables. We're scheduled to talk about what resources we're pulling together for Savannah. It'd be really nice if we had the handout for that, but I think we're running a little bit behind time, and I think that might be a little bit optimistic, but at least have something in a mock-up form that we can show folks that like, hey, this is the structure, this is where we're heading, and this is what we're putting together, and this is why we think it's a value, and this is really the focus. And then steps 2 and 3 are to expand this information to include XYZ. Does that mesh with what kind of people are thinking?
Yep.
Yeah, I just threw in there, I can definitely provide resources before then if you just want to send me a template.
A template for the
Just like what you need, like thoughts on what we discussed today, and I could match up the resources that I provided with what we want to put as resources for like the different populations this is targeting, or like, different resources on like low cost and affordable broadband, different things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess to that point, Jordan, if you can stick around for like maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you, Jaylena, I can compare calendars and we can find time next week to chat more about the deliverables. That way we can follow up with Carrie and Michael and everybody else from this group, Calvin and everybody else that, might need to provide input on it. I know we're at time, so that's what I figured we could. If you can stick around for a minute, we'll look at calendars.
Yeah,
if not, I think I sent my availability
The other thing is, I don't think that we have meetings scheduled beyond. Actually, we do have a meeting scheduled on the 5th for this group as well. I think if we can kind of all work on kind of improving the document, I'm going to need a lot of help on kind of some of the resource collections. That's something that would be really, really beneficial. Maybe for the April 10th meeting, if we had just like a PDF resource list with links kind of broken out by category, that can be something we can actually hand to folks or make
Mhm.
available to folks in that meeting. And it doesn't need to be prettified. It doesn't need to be consumer ready, but we can just have a list of resources, kind of broken out by category, which is one of the things that we were hoping to have done anyway. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's fair. And then you and Jaylene like meet next week about how to, marry health disparities to this group for the Savannah topic. And then, on the 10th is a little tough. So maybe before the 10th, we send it out to the group as to what we talked about.
I'll stick around after, but I want to let people go. This is this was a great meeting, and I really appreciate all your feedback. You really helped kind of focus, I think, what we're trying to do. I think we're really starting to get it kind of honed in on what our audience is and what we're trying to do. So there's still more work to do, but if we could all go through and look at this, add comments, make recommendations, and then I'd like to have something that's a really kind of finalized outline for our meeting on the 4th or on the 5th. Does that sound acceptable? And then we can flesh it out, figure out what graphics we need to do, and start pulling all that together.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. Jaylene, are you able to hang out for just a bit?
Just a minute. I actually have to leave in like I need to leave now. But let's just figure out a time really quick, and if somebody could schedule it, that'd be awesome. What are we looking
Yeah.
at? What days?
So Jaylene, you had said you were available Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Thursday, Friday is my most flexible in terms of Jordan's time zone. So Jordan,
Friday I
anytime.
am wide open.
Yeah, I'm pulling my right now.
Friday I can meet anytime after 9:30 a.m. Mountain, up to probably about 11. So 9:30 to 11.
Well, okay. And I'd request that we not meet until after
Uh,
12:30 or
Alaska.
1 Pacific Standard Time. Or not Pacific.
12:30 or 1, there's 3 hours. That's 4 o'clock. Can we do
So-
1?
Yeah, we
Um,
absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
Well, is that 1 Eastern time?
Eastern is what I
No,
was thinking.
1 his time.
Oh, no.
I'll be picking
I was
up
thinking
the
1
kids at
Eastern.
3 o'clock tomorrow, or 3 o'clock Eastern next Friday.
I was thinking 1 Eastern. So anytime after 1 p.m. Eastern time will work for me on Friday.
Oh, so I was just informed the next Friday is a half day. So could we do any time after 2 p.m. Eastern?
Yep,
I
that
can
works for
do
me.
2:30. 2:30.
Calvin, does that work for you?
He'll show up when I
Oh,
tell
thumbs up.
I'm just joking.
All right. Jordan or Calvin, do you guys want to schedule it or do you want me to?
Do you mind sending the invite, Reed?
2:30 next Friday.
The 29th. Yep.
Right. I
Deal.
gotta go.
I'll send it
Bye,
shortly.
guys. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'll send that shortly. Anything else you guys need from me at the moment?
No, thanks, Reed. Appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Sorry I haven't been able to make these, but excited about where it's headed. Have a
Well,
good weekend.
We've been languishing a bit, but we're making good progress now.
I don't think languishing is the term for any TRC. We are all getting by. We are
Oh my
all
goodness.
by.
All right. Thanks, Reed.
See ya.
All right. Bye. Whew.